Qué rico tenerlos por aquí, iniciando este miércoles de liderazgo. Me encanta tener personas recurrentes a nuestras charlas de los miércoles, pero también tener gente nueva. Rico que estén por acá. Hoy tengo uno de mis invitados favoritos y el de muchos de ustedes, Bob Dunham, nuestro maestro, nuestro amigo, mi partner y nuestro fundador de la disciplina del liderazgo generativo. Hoy le he pedido a Bob que hablemos de un tema que es muy especial y es muy curioso para las personas que trabajan en organizaciones. Yo me acuerdo hace muchos años, durante muchos años trabajé en organizaciones y cuando yo trabajaba en las organizaciones, para mí lo más importante era lucir inteligente, lucir capaz, lucir técnicamente eficiente, lúcida, y durante mucho tiempo nunca supe que tenía un cuerpo, ni cuáles eran los efectos de mi cuerpo sobre mi equipo, sobre mis conversaciones, sobre el efecto que tenían mis reacciones sobre las otras personas. Y aunque tenía esta idea de que era buen líder porque era muy buena intelectualmente y técnicamente, no me daba cuenta cuáles eran las posibilidades de mejorar en mi liderazgo porque podía aprender emocional y somáticamente sobre cómo manejar el espacio somático. Bob tiene una frase que a mí me encanta y es que es el título de nuestra charla de hoy, y es que el liderazgo es, él dice, un deporte de alto contacto. Y lo hemos traducido como un arte de alto contacto, porque definitivamente es una interacción humana que está en el día a día, cuerpo a cuerpo, emoción, con todas las personas que trabajan con nosotros. Entonces, le he pedido a Bob hoy que nos hable acerca de por qué lo somático, por qué lo corporal es tan fundamental en el trabajo del líder y en los resultados que el líder genera en su organización. Para aquellos que es la primera vez que entran, en la parte de abajo del Zoom, van a encontrar un botón que se llama interpretación. Y allí van a poder elegir si quieren escuchar la conferencia en inglés o en español. Así que ahí pueden escoger el idioma. Beita va a ser nuestro puente. Beita. Ella, como siempre, les pide que hablen despacio. Pueden hablar en inglés o pueden hablar en español. Si quieren hacerle preguntas a Bob, ella se va a encargar de traducirlos. Entonces, ahí pueden escoger su idioma. Y lo otro que les queremos pedir es que prendan sus cámaras. Sabemos que a veces estamos ya en la cama o en el sofá o estamos un poco cansados o con los niños o con el perro o con el gato. No importa. Invítenos a sus casas, entren a esta conversación con sus cámaras prendidas y que sea el cuerpo y la presencia de nuestro cuerpo la que esté conversando con nosotros el día de hoy. Así que bienvenidos nuevamente. Bob, todos tuyos.
Oh, lucky me. So let me say hello, everyone. Give me a high 10. I want to make sure we're alive here. We're not looking at cardboard cutouts. Okay, sometimes we get the fake people in the COVID world. And interestingly enough, with this request to turn on cameras, when there are a certain number of people attending with their cameras off, it makes me feel like I'm in a meeting where half the people are not there. And the body is there, but the camera is turned off. So since this particular conversation is about what we call the full body contact sport, of leadership, it requires your body. It requires your presence. In fact, in leadership, if you don't have presence, you can't lead. Nobody wants to follow a ghost. Nobody is going to commit to a talking head. And so we're going to explore a little bit here this evening. And we're not just going to talk about the body, we're going to do a few exercises. And for some people who come to these introductory webinars, oh my God, you're going to make me do something. We always have a few people who disappear when we do a breakout. And that's very interesting, because if you have a commitment to leadership, you want to be curious, you want to enter the experience, you want to meet people, you want to face the world. And sometimes we come from a history where that is not our comfort zone. And so leadership seems a little bit more distant. And we sometimes compensate by being very smart, as Maribel said. I'm very intelligent. I don't need to be present. I just give you the answer. But that doesn't produce the kind of team that's fully committed. That doesn't produce the full experience of being together. There's no way to really have the sense of meaningful action when we're still disconnected from each other. So we're just going to do some very simple exercises. Are you open to that? Okay, so I'm going to do the very first full body contact sport leadership practice with you. It's going to be very difficult, very challenging. It's going to be called taking a deep breath. So I want you to take a deep breath, really do it, and relax on the exhale. When we do that for the first time, we often find, oh my God, there's so much tension in my body. This would be good if I could learn to breathe and relax, because how do I show up to others when I'm full of tension? What we have learned over the years, when you are full of tension, you provoke tension in the other people. And so part of the leadership embodiment to be able to open effective leadership relationships is to be fully present in a body that's open and not gripped in tension. The other part of the deep breath is part of our learning practices. We found that our culture has trained us so much to be in our heads, understand, assess, do I like it, do I don't like it, yada, yada, yada. And sometimes we need to get out of that. We need to let go of all the chatter, come present, and actually see what's happening, not be in our head wondering what happened to the last 60 seconds. Does this make sense? That this is actually part of our everyday interaction with people, and certainly is important for our interactions at work, in leadership, and in our teams. So I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath again, but this time we're not only going to relax on the exhale, we're going to let go of whatever the chatter is in our head and actually come present. And that's the point, to be open and present. Take a deep breath and open and present. Look at the people now. Actually connect to them. Don't just look at them like a TV screen. Hi, I see you. Fantastic. That's a choice we have in our everyday lives. That's a choice we have at work. Are we going to be present with people, or are we going to be in our uptight, contracted place, which is too common? And so we're exploring the embodiment of leadership. Now, why would we be interested in the embodiment of leadership? Well, I have a question for you. Why would you be interested in a leader who's not embodied? If they're not embodied with leadership, what are they? They do have bodies. They're embodied in something else. They could be embodied in the order giver. They can be embodied in the one who knows. They could be embodied in the critic. But these are not the kinds of leaders that we are going to want to connect with. And so what we've found, I have been on this journey, this is my 41st year of learning at this edge of leadership. Some of my colleagues here have been with me for 12 and more years. And what I found in my very first year, my first week, my first day of exploring leadership is it was me and the other person, body to body, having conversations. And the intention was that something was going to happen after the conversation. And yet, when I entered these conversations, I found that often what was intended to happen after the conversation didn't happen. In fact, I found that many of the conversations were difficult. People were nervous, there was anxiety, there was distrust, there was resignation, there was resentment, there were so many things going on. And yet, what I did before I understood this territory of leadership is I tried to have the conversation anyway. I tried to pretend we're going to really listen to each other and we're really going to make an agreement and we're really going to have something happen. And I didn't notice all the signs that were in the way, that almost always showed up in the body. And sometimes when I didn't see it in the other body, I could feel it in my body. You know when you're with someone and it doesn't feel right? You can't really see what's going on, but you know there's something off because we're actually made to feel each other's bodies, to feel each other's awareness. And so when you ask someone to do something as a leader, you actually want to trust that they're going to give you an honest answer. Yes, you want them to do it, but actually you don't. What you want is an honest answer. Will you do it or won't you? And already we're in a new world of leadership. When we're trying to produce ownership from people rather than getting them to agree to what we want. An organization where everybody agrees with what the leaders want is an organization in breakdown. Lack of ownership, overcommitment, it's because you can't have an honest conversation. And so what shows up? What shows up in cultures in which you can't have an honest conversation is fear, contraction, resignation, leading to resentment. And after that, you wind up in absence, you're no longer there, or resentful attendance. This is often the mood in organizations. Now, maybe I've been in a different planet than you. Have you seen this in organizations? Yeah. So we're describing something important here. And the question I'll ask us is, why is that? Why are our teams in our organizations and our places of work not places where we feel safe, where we have a voice, where we can be honest, where excellence is happening rather than the tolerance of continued irritation and frustration and breakdown? Because there's missing conversations, and Why do we have these conversations missing? Is we don't have the body that knows how to create the kind of conversation that's needed. So people are afraid of them and they avoid the topic. So if that aspect of leadership is of interest to you, of how to create a body that can create the space to have honest conversations about the future, honest agreements, including no. No, by the way, is an agreement. A very committed agreement. That we have more choice and more capacity to create excellence when we're dealing with what's really going on rather than the contraction away from honest conversations. But to do that, we have to have the ability to play the full body contact sport. And it's not only leadership that plays that game. It's also human beings in relationship. You will find many of the same issues in relationships that we have in the leadership domain. Are we going to be honest with each other or not? Are we going to trust each other or not? Are we going to create something of mutual value or just avoid the topic? Are we going to talk about our breakdowns or not? So that whenever we do talk about the breakdowns, it's already an explosion. Too late. No conversation available. Is this making sense? Good. Then this is now my 41st year on this path of learning. And I'm fortunate to have worked with thousands of students and dozens of companies, management teams that have enabled me to learn. And my passion is to do this exploration with certain questions. What is it in human interaction that works? And what is it about human interaction that doesn't work that we can change and get back into a positive direction with other people? This is fundamental to leadership. Leadership is not simply being in charge. We have many ideas of what a leader is. Many of them are mistaken. Some people think a leader is the person with the title. But we know many people with titles that we don't regard as good leaders. Sometimes we think of leaders as the decision maker. But we know decision makers who've made decisions and the team does not take ownership for the decision. Sometimes we think the leader is the expert who knows the answer. But a lot of experts don't have followers, even though they have answers. Is this making sense? Then what is leadership? The articulation we've come up with from our many, many years of study and working with leaders and practicing to be leaders is that leadership is interacting with people, mostly through conversation, but also with presence, connection, mutual care, that creates a space where people see they have a voice and that shared commitments can be made to create the future together. That's the essence of it. And people want to be in that place rather than be treated like a machine. And we need to learn to go beyond our history. There's many lessons of our history that have created some levels of success for us that actually become a problem when you try to take it to the world of teams and organizations. One strategy for success is to work hard, to do a lot. I bet a lot of you are hard workers, that you do a lot. You want to do good things. But working hard at what? When we work hard at tasks, when we do a lot of tasks, we run out of capacity. And then we have a problem. We think our job is to do more tasks. And we tend to operate like we're a donkey hauling bricks. And if we could just haul a few more bricks, we would be successful. That's not the way action and value in the world works. It works by making and fulfilling promises of value to people and figuring out how to do that. And if we're trapped in the education of being good at doing tasks, that gets in the way. The other problem with doing tasks is that we're trained to be solo artists. Give me my things to do and I'll do them well. Watch me, I'm really good. But teams can't be teams if they're full of solo artists. They have to be in the same game, the same playbook. They need to coordinate. They need to adjust together. They need to listen to each other. They need to feel each other. You can't have a great team full of solo artists. I did consulting in Silicon Valley for many years. And one of the things that startups do in Silicon Valley to get venture money, to get investments, is they put together a cast of the executives of the company. And every executive has a sparkling resume. They're all stars. And every team I worked with who did this had a problem. This group of stars didn't know how to work together. They didn't know how to be a team. Amazing. It was a big problem. And this shows there's something missing in our understanding of leadership, our development of leadership. And the part that we found was always unavoidable was the part that many people never were taught. Leaders have bodies. Bodies talk. In fact, your body is always talking louder than your mouth. And if you say, trust me, you immediately have the question of, do I trust you? And the rigid person in their head doesn't produce the kind of high-performing teams that we see in highly excellent organizations. So we learn to breathe. What I want to share with you, I'm going to do a short set of images here, and then we're going to go into experiencing what we're talking about here. Let me share my screen. And we have, can you see that okay? And so what our claim is from our 41 years now of working on leadership to be what we call generative leadership. Why do we call it generative leadership? Because it's about generating results that matter. It's not being an expert or the person who has a certificate. It's about making results happen. And we have developed this to the point we believe that these are professions. And we're offering in our programs to help people meet that professional standard. But we have a problem. We have a problem that leadership is a blind spot. In fact, in our journey of developing leadership over the past 40 years, we found a number of important blind spots in our culture that we really don't know what action is. Action as tasks is not an effective framework for high-performing teams. We don't know how to manage emotions. We think they happen to us, and that's all we can do is to put up with them. We don't even understand what a human being is. And so we're going to explore some of these questions, but particularly the role of the body. And so one of the key learnings of our journey over this past 40 years has been that awareness creates choice. If you're not aware of something, then you have no choice about it. And that's what blindness is. Blindness is when you are not aware and therefore something does not even exist and you don't have a choice about it. So if you're not aware of what produces leadership, you can't do leadership. If you're not aware of what produces an excellent team, you won't have an excellent team. And so we have been looking for what is the awareness we need to have in the world of action, leadership, and teams. And we found that once you have awareness, you have to learn a new skill, a new habit. You have to pay attention. You have to pay attention and have the right focus on the right things, because the old common sense of working hard and hoping and perhaps being charming isn't enough. And so what we found is that the way that you have your awareness and attention as habits, as skill, will create the kind of observer and actor you are, the kind of leader that you are. And so we're going to introduce you to some new awarenesses and some new ways to pay attention. And so, since there's blindness, meaning we don't see some things, meaning we aren't aware of some things, if we're going to be effective as leaders or as coaches of leaders, we need new eyes. We need to illuminate the blindness. We call that becoming a new observer. And when we become a new observer, what we can see is the possibility of new actions and new results. This has been a framework that's taught by other coaching schools, but we learned something important. Becoming a new observer is not enough. Having new concepts is not enough. In order for these new actions to produce new results, you also have to become a new actor. You have to have new embodiment. And so that's what we're going to explore. What is that? How do we do it? And we have this term that we call the self. We'll explain what that is in a moment. But there is a way that we listen in conversations that reveal what's coming, that reveal the other person in a way that's not just in the words. And it's the coherence of these terms here that I want to explain for you, where S is somatics. Body is part of somatics, but somatics is body and mind. It's not just body. It's not just the sensations in the body. It's the way you will configure yourself in the world of action. E is emotions and moods, which are going on all the time because we're human beings. L is our language, our stories, our distinctions for speaking and listening. And that's the SEL that we learn to pay attention to and had to learn to pay attention to as leaders, because the body shows your commitment. The body shows a part of the conversation that may not be spoken. And these three are interconnected. If you change one, you change the others. And the way that you developed your presence, your ability to connect, your ability to listen, your ability to go into the unknown, your ability to take a stand in the world, comes from practice and the history of your practice. And so this self, there is a requirement for certain skills, a certain kind of self to be an effective leader. And so let's begin by looking at how we do that. How do we learn to have these choices? And I want to point out here that we're saying something that's still quite extraordinary in the common sense. We're saying that in terms of your body reactions, that most of us simply think is us, that is a place of learning and a place of choice. You can teach your body to enter a challenging situation rather than contract from it. Our emotions are not simply something that happened to us, that there's nothing we can do anything about. We have choice about our emotions. The stories that we live in, that live our lives, that we are good enough or not good enough, are not true. They're simply stories. We can be the author of our stories. And so we have a tremendous world of choice in how we can develop ourselves as leaders and help others develop themselves professionally and personally. So how does this happen? It happens through practice. What is the structure of practice that leads us to be an effective leader or not an effective leader? You see, each of us is the product of our history of practice. Each of us has skills or a lack of skill based on what we have practiced. Each of us has presence or lack of presence based on our practice. I know people who have spent a lifetime practicing being resentful or resigned. They're very good at it. And they actually think that that's the way life is and that's the way they are. But we have learned when you become aware, awareness creates choice, you can practice something else. You can practice becoming confident, appreciative, and enter the moods that would create a good life in the presence of a leader. So the biology of practice is that it takes about 300 repetitions of a new act in the body, a new act of attention, a new act of speaking, a new act of listening, a new act of presence, a new conversation. It would take about 300 repetitions for this to become familiar, that you would have muscle memory, that you could begin to do it fairly easily. And when you've done it 3,000 times, it becomes a habit. So that's really good news. If we know what the habits, the skills are of leadership, we do them by practicing it. We develop them through practice. But it has bad news too. You can practice bad habits. You can practice contraction rather than connection, avoidance rather than entering. And so this is something we're going to look at. Take a moment here. Everybody take a deep breath. When we look at your life journey, your leadership journey, your coaching journey, what is its soundtrack? What is its fundamental mood? Open? Ambitious? Closed? Heavy? That mood is a product of what we have embodied as our story. And so we can even change that. You're not stuck forever. Now, we've learned in this biology that what a human being can pay attention to, they can keep track of about 40 stimuli per second. When you're learning how to play tennis, for example, or the piano, or public speaking, or being aware of what's going on in a meeting, you can pay attention to about 40 stimuli per second. But when you practice and it becomes a skill, you don't need to be putting your attention on the 40 stimuli per second. You can absorb it into your habits, good habits, hopefully, and your subconscious nervous system is operating at 20 million stimuli per second. That's how we learn. That's how we embody. Then we free up our 40 stimuli per second to pay attention to the next step of learning. This is very important, I've found, for people that are older. They think, am I too old to learn? Has time passed me by? No, you have a body that can learn like any other body. And learning in our discipline is a lifetime journey, not just for younger people. The research has also shown that what we call mastery, doing extraordinary work in a particular domain, developing skill, takes about 10,000 hours of practice. And so this 10,000 hours, I'm playing a game with my cursor. It always disappears. So where'd the cursor go? So 10,000 hours, that's about 40 hours a week for 5 years. So you can master something in 40 hours a week of focused practice in 5 years. But the problem is, what are you practicing? The challenge here is your body is already practicing. When you say, I'm not going to practice, then your body is practicing that. No, I'm not going to practice. I'm not going to put my attention on where I'm learning. I'm too busy. I just have to get to work. And so this is the background that has had an extraordinary impact for our understanding that to learn a performance art, you need to practice. And in order to practice, you need to know what the practices are. And the practices always take you, where do they take you? Where does a new skill take you? Right to where you're not competent. I'm doing this new thing and I'm not good at it yet. It doesn't feel familiar yet. It's uncomfortable. I'm making mistakes. And you know what many people do there? They say, screw it. I'm going to go back to where I'm comfortable. I'm going to go back to what I already know. And they never grow. They never learn. We call that barrier, that place where you go from the comfort zone to new territory, from being comfortable to uncomfortable, from going from what you know to what is unknown. We call that the edge. Leaders create a relationship with the edge that they see the new possibilities are on the other side of the edge. They're not just in what you already know and where you're comfortable. And so you learn to be comfortable with discomfort. You learn to go into the unknown with ambition rather than retracting back. This is a key learning we learned in leadership. First big lesson. It's not about comfort. That's just a body reaction. It's about your commitment. And learning to go beyond the edge is almost always for people learning to go beyond fear. We need to have a new relationship with fear. So what is learning? What does learning feel like as an experience? So I'm going to have you all do something I know you can do. Take your hands and clasp them together. Everybody, put your hands together like that. Now you have all just done something that's very familiar. You're very good at it. This is your comfort zone. You actually picked the way to do it, that you know how to do it, and you've done it this way your whole life. This is your comfort zone. Now I want you to switch your hands and go the other way. How does that feel? For some people it's okay, but it feels a little different, right? It's not quite this is doing something new. Now I'm gonna take you to the real intense form of this. I'm gonna have you cross your arms. Cross your arms. You can do this. Now what you did is you just went to your comfort zone. This is the way that you're comfortable crossing your arms. You've done your whole life, you've crossed your arms this way. And now if you can, I'm going to have you cross them the other way. Almost everybody finds this incredibly uncomfortable. And this is what learning feels like, to go from the old shape to the new shape. It's not comfortable. And so I'm going to have you practice with me here. We're going to do several repetitions. Cross your arms in your comfort zone. Cross them the other way. Go back to the comfort zone. Cross them the other way. Go back to the comfort zone. Cross them the other way. I bet for most of you, the second way, the uncomfortable way, was starting to get a little more familiar. Did you feel it? That it actually was beginning to shift. And the tragedy is, most people, when they go to that uncomfortable place with something new, they retract, they stop, they say, I don't like this. I'm going to go back to my old way. Are you seeing how important this is for life and learning as well as leadership? Because leaders are always being called to face a changing world, to take us to a new future, to require us to face the new. And we need to have a body that can be comfortable with what used to be uncomfortable. Making sense? This is the body part. First, we change our story, we change our mood, and now we change our practices. Then, as we do that, let me come back and, given that we see the edge, I want to take us to the world of action. The world of action seen by the leader. Every leader who's effective in action has to see some version of this world. This is the common sense of our culture. If I want results, I have to take action. Isn't that right? Makes sense, right? I act, I get results. I act, get results. But here's the problem. What if you want new results? What if you want results that you've never produced before? What if you want results that requires new action? This is a real problem in people's lives and careers and for leaders, because the first orientation of people and organizations is, if we're not getting the results we want, we'll just do more. We'll just do more of what's not working to try to get more results. And that is only a road to exhaustion. That's when we have to stop and say, where does the right actions for new results come from? In fact, what is action? What is this anatomy of action? Where does action come from that could help us see how to produce new, more valuable results without just being donkeys hauling brooks? And so the answer that we discovered, and this was introduced to me for the first time 42 years ago, 41 years ago, was action is shaped by commitment. In fact, commitment is an action. If I ask you to do something and you say yes, you have just performed an act of creating the future. If I ask you to do something and you say no, you have performed an act that has just created the future. I'm clear. Thank you very much. I know what's coming. And if I ask you to do something and you say, maybe, if you say, I'll try, what future do I have? This is the sloppiness that happens in the world of coordination. In the world of action, is we don't get clear about our commitments. And commitment is a very interesting aspect of action because it's inside you. We think about action out there. We think about results out there. But what's determining the action, and therefore the result, is what's inside you. This is a big concern for leaders. Are people committed to our path to the future? Yeah, they show up every day. They do things every day. But are they committed to take the right actions, to face the challenges. When you have someone who agrees to act on your behalf, imagine that they say yes, and you can tell they're really committed. Then you have more trust. They're bringing what's required to take ownership for an action. But what if you ask someone to do something, they say, okay, yeah, all right. And you can tell they're not really committed. What result are you going to get? And this begins to show the dimension of where we need to listen as leaders and as human beings in relationship. And so where do these commitments come from? They often show up, they always are accessible from conversations. Commitments are created in conversation. If I ask you to do something, that is a commitment act. Will you do this? I'm very committed to change the narrative of our future. You say yes, you've changed the future. You say no, you've changed what I hope the future would be, and I have to go somewhere else. We're creating the future all the time. And what do organizations exist for? What do teams exist for? To fulfill certain results. Then this is the new anatomy. And this claim, everybody take a deep breath. I want you to really open to this. This claim, which I have been exploring for over 40 years, and that no one has shown me a case that doesn't comply with this. All your results in your life, personally and with others, and of the groups you're in, all your results come from your prior conversations. The good results, the bad results, the so-so results. They come from the conversations that you have. They come from the conversations you don't have. The conversations you do well and the conversations you do poorly. That's amazing. And that's where we have found that since results and action come from conversations, conversation is a full body expression. And remember, a conversation is not something that you do alone. It is always a product of two people. There's always a speaker and a listener. You don't have a conversation without that. You may talk to yourself, but in the world of leadership and action, it's always about conversations with others. And there's one more aspect here of the world of action, which is what we call care. You either care about the results or you don't. You either care about the actions or you don't. You care about the commitments or you don't. And if you do care, you bring yourself with ownership and full engagement in this act of creating a satisfying future with others. And if you don't, then we won't have that satisfaction. So Mary Bell, can you explain a bit here what we mean by care in the world of Espanol?
But do you always like me to explain care? Bob?
I love the way you do it.
Bien, además de ser uno de mis distinciones favoritas y de poder asegurarles que es el, como dicen, el ingrediente secreto del liderazgo generativo y del éxito en la vida, sin ninguna duda. El care en inglés tiene dos connotaciones. Tiene la connotación del sustantivo y tiene la connotación del verbo. Es decir, tiene la connotación de lo que cuido y tiene la connotación de cuidar. Entonces, cuando nosotros hablamos del care, tiene que ver con esa sensación somática, no es mental, no es una idea, no es algo que quiero, sino es esta sensación somática que me permite decir, eso me importa cuidar, eso es algo que me importa cuidar, ese es un futuro que quiero tener, eso es algo que quiero vivir. Es esto, X o Y, lo que ustedes quieran, es algo que le da sentido, satisfacción y valor a mi vida. Entonces, traducirla del inglés al español directamente no es tan fácil, porque tiene una connotación mucho más vivencial. Entonces, no la traducimos como cuido o no la traducimos como cuidar, sino la traducimos como eso que nos importa, ¿qué es aquello que nos importa cuidar? ¿Qué es eso que nos importa cuidar? Esa es mi explicación en español.
Very good. Care also has this interesting quality that it's internal. It's inside you. And yet, the level at which you care, or the level at which other people care about their actions and results, shifts the way they act. When you really care, you really take ownership. When you don't care so much, yeah, you'll go through the motions. I have a question for you. How is your relationship, your habits with commitment and care in your life, in your work? We found in our journey that we need to pay attention there, because high performance as leaders and as teams only happens when we share care. It only happens when we share commitment. But what's commitment? What's the feeling of commitment? What's the expression of it? We're going to do a short exercise here. So how do you want to deal with hooking people up, Maribel? Because some may not be present with their cameras off. Who's going to play in this experience?
Sí, Bob. Y tenemos adicionalmente otra particularidad, y es que estamos compartiendo 3 idiomas. Estamos en inglés, en español, en portugués. Entonces,
Oh my God.
Yes. Entonces, va a ser un poco
Yay.
va a ser un poco más difícil que podamos organizarnos en breakup rooms. Entonces, lo que te sugiero es que hagamos el ejercicio poniendo pins, que escojamos a alguien y escojamos a alguien dentro de la pantalla, que pongamos un pin.
Well, they have to interact. They have to listen. This is the I will exercise.
Ok. Pero entonces, mi sugerencia es que utilicemos solamente el I will. No importa que estemos en portugués, en español o en inglés, sino que sí.
You're right. Okay, well,
Entonces,
we're dealing with the embodiment of commitment. The words don't matter. In fact, this is the point of the exercise.
exactamente.
Let me tell you the exercise. It's going to reveal something that was amazing to me when I first got clear about it. I made the claim that action is shaped by commitment, and not words, but the commitment behind the words. So here's the exercise you're going to do. You're going to be with a partner, and you can pick whatever language you want to use, because you're only going to say 2 words. I will. No discussion, no talking, only those 2 words. And you're going to go back and forth. So the first person is going to say, I will. Then the second person also says, I will. But here's the game. Every time you say it, it needs to mean something different than any prior time that has been spoken. So for example, if I say, I will, that sounds normal. If I say, I will, that's different. If I say, I will, or I will, and I want you to listen, because every time you say I will differently, it means something different. A different future is showing up. And this is the art of listening. to listen beyond the words to the commitment. And this is one of the arts of leadership and coordinating well in life. So that's it. You'll go back and forth. You need to get at least 10 different meanings. And after you've done the 10, then there's a conversation. We'll come back. We'll keep this short. We'll come back and we'll discuss what was it you were paying attention to that had it mean something different when the words were the same. And then we'll begin to see the world of leadership begin to show up. So let's break into pairs. We'll only go about 3-4 minutes, and we'll come back and see how was your experience in the exercise. Just listen to how it's said and what it means in your embodiment. Marta?
Yes, people from Brazil that are coming, many, Bob, they're asking me to explain in Portuguese.
Okay, please.
Então, a gente vai fazer um exercício que a única coisa que a gente pode falar é eu farei, ou I will. Mas a gente vai falar de 10 diferentes formas de espaços emocionais, como eu farei, ou eu farei. Nada mais pode ser falado, só eu farei, ou I will. No final das 10 vezes, trocar impressões de como foi prestar atenção não na palavra, mas no compromisso que tem atrás das palavras.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
So let me just say one more thing before the break. I just want you to notice we had 7 people disappear after I announced the exercise. And this is exactly what the challenge of leadership is. It is a full body contact sport. If you're coming to watch a TV program, you're not interested in leadership. And those people left. They're not really willing to go into the fire. And I'm glad that those of you are here, you're going to be able to learn that this is a real experiential domain. Okay, have fun in the exercise. We'll come back and check in 4 minutes. Yay! We survived. Give me high tens. Let's celebrate. Fantastic. Now, very interesting. The question is, what were you noticing that had you listen differently to the different ways of speaking? Anybody can share. What did you notice that had you listen the commitment differently? Because this is an exercise of listening to commitment. Anybody can speak. This is simple. What did you pay attention to? Yeah, Eric.
Thanks. For me, it was very difficult because after 3 attempts, I didn't know what else to do. I think of the feeling that I want to share, but I couldn't. I have to act, and it was an effort for and the other person as well, because it was the first 3 were very easy, but after that, and I have to pay attention, and it was difficult because at the time she answered, then I have to start to think about my next movement. So
there we go. So you see, we revealed that your comfort zone is kind of small. So you have a chance to be a little more wild and crazy in your life. Yeah, very good. Andre,
thank you.
You're welcome. What did you notice?
Oh, can I speak in Portuguese so Marta translates?
Please. And Marta will translate for me.
Okay,
Thanks.
I will ask you to talk slowly, so in parts, so I can translate like small pieces.
Ok, nice. Primeira coisa, eu me senti muito parecido com o Eric. O meu repertório foi pequeno.
First of all, I found myself pretty much like Eric. The repertoire really small.
E enquanto eu falava, eu farei, eu pensei muito em como eu respondo normalmente na vida.
So when I was listening to the I will, I was thinking about how I what?
Martica, sorry. Beita,
Oh.
can you translate to Spanish, please?
André, o que você falou quando você estava escutando?
Quando eu estava respondendo, quando eu estava falando, I will, eu estava pensando em como eu respondo normalmente na vida. Quando eu recebo pedidos na empresa, na família, enfim.
Okay. So when I was saying I will, I was paying attention in how I do it in my real life, in my organization, in my family.
Sim.
E eu percebi o meu próprio nível de comprometimento.
So I realized about the level of my own commitment in all of these places.
Excellent, excellent. New awareness. Yeah, new awareness, new choices. Beautiful. Clara. Clara Stella. Can you hear me? Oh, there you are. Yay.
Fue curioso porque con Denise no nos pusimos de acuerdo, pero lo estábamos haciendo como lento. No sé si estábamos pensándolo, pero al menos yo lo que estaba tratando de mostrar era qué quería decir con la frase y con la expresión. O sea, yo sí estaba pensando en las diferentes posibilidades. O sea, cuando quería hacerlo, cuando estaba dudando de verdad hacerlo, cuando decía lo haré sin ningún tipo de compromiso. Entonces trataba de ver cómo expresar en mi rostro que no iba a haber compromiso. Y eso no lo logré mucho, pero era como esa sensación de decir la frase verbalmente, pero gesticular de acuerdo a lo que realmente quería decir. O sea, sí lo haré seguro, o estoy dudando que lo voy a hacer, me estoy preguntando a mí misma si sí lo quiero hacer, algo así.
Very good, very good. You have very high standards for performance that you have to worry about it. But it's very good that you are seeing that different levels of commitment would be expressed in different ways. And when we're going through the exercise, well, let's check in with Diego, please. What did you notice?
Solo para decir que, bueno, fue muy similar a la que comenta Clara Estela. Con Irina pasamos por diferentes momentos, pero en un momento, bueno, yo me conecté con un proyecto que estoy haciendo ahora que me tiene muy en atención a él, pero en un momento ya para mí no fue un ejercicio. Yo ya dije, lo haré, y había una emoción de lo que estaba yo haciendo, y no fue un ejercicio, fue de verdad que dije que lo haré, y ya me vi a mí mismo en una emoción distinta en él, y en una sensación distinta. Me pasó eso.
Excellent. Now, with that discovery, Diego, that there is a tone, a way of really having commitment, it shows up in a particular way. What you all noticed when people do this exercise, what everybody notices is what's different. Well, the body was different. The emotion was different. The manner of expression was different, but they were the side effect of the commitment to the future. And this is when we begin to learn to listen for commitment, not just to words. The words don't have the commitment. The full body has the commitment. Maribel.
Gracias, Bob. Estaba escuchando los comentarios, estaba leyendo también el comentario que Rosángela nos ponía en el chat, donde nos decía que cada uno de las, o sea, que el significado era totalmente diferente dependiendo de cada una de las emociones. Y resulta que creo que muchas veces puedes tener una emoción positiva y decir, sí, lo haré. Y sin embargo, sentir que hay una barrera o sentir que somáticamente la persona no está comprometida contigo, por más amable, querida, bonita que sea. Y esto me hace pensar en lo que a diario nos pasa como líderes, que nos tenemos que enfrentar no solamente a diferentes tipos de personas, sino a personas que nos gustan y personas que no nos gustan, a personas con las que es difícil trabajar y personas con las que es fácil trabajar. Pero con todas necesitamos poder llegar a un entendimiento de si lo que vamos a hacer, lo vamos a hacer. Y ahí no es cuestión tanto de la emoción, sino de entender si la persona está comprometida con lo que está diciendo. He tenido experiencias de personas muy serias, muy tímidas, muy introvertidas, que pueden no expresar mucha emoción, pero pueden estar seriamente comprometidas cuando te están diciendo algo.
Sí. Beautiful. So when I learned to listen for commitment, when I learned to listen to the body and the emotion as well as the language, I began to see a different world. I began to listen to a different world. In my Silicon Valley days, when I first was exposed to this and was shown that commitment is where the action comes from, I spent a weekend workshop learning this. I went back to work on Monday, and the world was different. I listened to every conversation differently. I began to make committed requests with responsibility for what I thought would do the best for our work together. And I listened for commitment. And I often heard the word yes without commitment. And this, I learned, was the problem with my organization. People made yeses. They didn't make promises. And so I began to have conversations with people and said, you don't sound sure, or, you know, what do we need to do to make this solid? I'm really counting on you. It wasn't a challenging conversation. It was a clarifying conversation. And I began to have agreements with people where by the end of our interaction, it was very clear that we had a real promise. Now we had other problems, capacity changes, that kind of thing, but the whole organization changed because now we were making promises, not saying yes. That was the disease of the organization. I was in an organization that had not been able to get a product out the door for 2.5 years, and I was made program manager. And when I began to have these conversations, we delivered all 35 products on time, on budget, with 10 times higher quality than had ever been achieved before in 6 months. Why? The conversations. Why did the conversations work? Different listening. We were looking for the commitment to produce the result, not the words. And so that is where I learned it's a full body contact sport, that I actually had to listen. I had to feel what was going on. I had to be bold enough to ask a question or say, we don't sound sure here, and do you need some help here? And I began to learn how to have the missing conversation, not just accept the resignation of the words. And so there's another exercise, if you're interested, that can really show how bodies are talking in the conversation louder than your words. Are you interested to explore? Okay, so this exercise, it's very good. It'll take only about 6 minutes, but it's going to be full body. The way we're going to do it, the best way to do it is if you stand up. So if you're willing to play, stand up, adjust your camera so people can see your face, so that this feels like a full body engagement. Very good. Excellent. Now, what I want you to do is to find someone that you're going to make your partner in the exercise and pin them. Now, if you pin them, you go up to the upper right-hand corner of their picture and you see 3 dots. And inside there's the word pin, P-I-N. Pick the pin and they become the full screen so that you are looking at one person And it doesn't matter that they know it's you, because you're going to be working with someone who's doing the same thing as you. So everybody has a partner now. And so I'm going to have you walk through. I want you to simply follow my instructions. The first thing in this exercise is it's going to be silent, no talking. But you're going to be communicating with your partner here. The second is that find a comfortable position. You're not going to move your feet. And I'm going to ask you to enter certain states of engagement that you're going to experience with your partner. So everybody take a deep breath. Very good. Now, we're going to do 4 rounds to experience different conditions of connection in the conversation. So this first round, I want you to act out physically without moving your feet, but do any other movement or posture or anything you want. I want you to be not present with your partner. Act it out now. Do whatever makes sense in your body to be not present with your partner. Notice what it feels like to be not present. Notice what it feels like to be with someone who's not present with you. What's the conversation going on here? What kind of future is showing up with this person? Just notice that. Very good. Shake it off. Take a deep breath. Clear yourself. The experience of the body saying, I'm not here, I don't want to be with you. Second round, take a deep breath. I want you to be present with your partner. You're not going to be absent or not present. You're fully present and you're closed to them. You're not open. So act that out now. I'm fully here and I'm not open to you. I'm not interested in sharing a future with you. Feel what it's like to be present and not open. Feel what it's like to be with someone who is present and closed, not open to you. What is the conversation going on? What is the future that's showing up? This is a huge conversation and it does not require words. Okay, shake it off. Take a deep breath. Clear yourself. Next round. This one is a little more sophisticated. In this round, you're going to be present and open. I'm here, I'm open, but I'm not connecting with you yet. I'm checking you out. I'm seeing what you got. So we can feel when we're connected and we can feel when we're not connected. So go ahead now, be present, open, but not connected. You're just looking at them. Ready? Go. Feel what it's like to be present. You're open, you're not closed, but you're not connected. Not really with them. Feel what it's like to be with someone who's present with you. They're open, but they're not connecting. What's the conversation going on? What's the future showing up? There's a name for this conversation. It's usually called a meeting. And there's a problem with this conversation because you can't make trustworthy promises unless you're connected, and we're not there yet. Take a deep breath, shake it off. Clear yourself. Last round. In this round with your partner, you're going to be present, you're going to be open, and you're going to connect with them. What is connect with them? Your attention is all the way with them. You're not paying attention to anything else. You're with them so much you can feel them. We're social creatures. We're made for this. So be with your partner, be present, open, and connect. Be with them. See what happens. Go. I'm here. I'm present. I'm open to you. In fact, I'm connected. We're doing this together. What are we doing here together? Feel what it's like to be present, open, and connected. Feel what it's like to be with someone who's present with you, open to you, and connecting with you. What's the conversation going on? What's the future that's showing up here? Huge differences in conversations, and not a word was spoken. And this conversation is going on even if there is talking. This is where the body speaks louder than your mouth. This is the somatics of leadership, the full body contact sport of life and relationship. Give your partner a high 10, thank them for sharing these experiences with you. And let's do a quick check-in. If anybody has a comment or a question, are you seeing that if we have leaders who are in their head and don't know how to show up and connect with people, we can have a lot of talking heads, and really not have shared futures. Does this make sense? Hello?
Pedro.
Okay. So let's have a comment here. Who'd like to share? What happened for you? What do you see about the way you normally listen and interact? What do you see is possible for the kind of conversational space you can create with your presence? Anybody? So I'm so glad we have people interested in leadership here. We're having a demonstration of contraction. So nobody wants to share? Okay, thank you. Good. Rosângela.
Vou falar em português. Marta, me ajuda. I can try in English, but I'm not sure if it will be okay.
You can do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
it was a strong experience. I'm very surprised at how strong it is to feel our body translating our intention.
Yes.
In the last experience, I feel very emotional, very happy, and all of my body was. Marta, arrepiar, como é que é?
I had goosebumps.
Goosebumps, a lot of my body. So it was very, very powerful and translate what happened in our everyday. And I think that how hard was for myself to feel close to the other person. It's a bad emotion. It's very uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable to imagine how the other person was feeling. So it was an excellent exercise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please. Irina.
I'm going to talk in Spanish, please.
Okay.
Bueno, yo lo que sentí, lo que me di cuenta es cómo, a pesar de que estamos en una forma virtual, ¿no? que podría pensar de que no nos conectamos tan bien como en lo presencial, esta forma de mirar la corporalidad igual genera emociones. ¿no? Cuando uno está totalmente desconectado y no prestando atención lo que sucede, o cuando uno realmente presta atención por más de que no estábamos interactuando, pasan cosas.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you. Now you are all seeing why we have discovered that the body, the somatics of the mind and body together are the foundation of leadership, because it creates the space that's shared by people. And so often, what is normal in organizations is disconnection. And when we're disconnected, we don't really own powerful shared commitment. We just go through the motions, we do what's expected, and we're lonely. And so this is an opportunity for leaders to produce something very powerful, to allow people to truly connect and bring their voice. You can't have a chorus if everybody doesn't have a voice. And the chorus has a stronger song than the solo artist. Maribel.
Esta es una de las razones por las que les contábamos y por las que siempre le decimos a nuestros clientes de consultoría y de coaching y nuestros estudiantes del programa lo importante que es entender el poder de lo somático, el poder de estar integrando nuestro cuerpo con nuestra mente. Hoy en día, y ya durante los últimos dos años, ustedes han visto lo que es estar pidiéndole a la gente en las reuniones de las oficinas, por favor prendan sus cámaras, por favor prendan sus cámaras. Tanto que la gente ya ni siquiera prende las cámaras. El otro día entré a una reunión con uno de mis clientes y el 70% de las cámaras estaban prendidas. Y le pedí que no empezara la reunión hasta que no todos prendieran sus cámaras para saber en dónde estaban. Y preguntamos por qué no prendían su cámara. Y resulta que la gente decía, estoy cansado de prender la cámara. Estoy cansado de estar en la pantalla todo el día. Y resulta que no es un tema de pantalla, porque igual cuando estábamos en la presencia o estábamos en las oficinas, la gente atendía, los gerentes o muchas personas que atienden, personas que les reportan, atendían a la gente siguiendo escribiendo en el computador mientras la persona les está hablando. Entonces, me conecto un poco con lo que dice Irina acerca de qué pasa si hacemos menos reuniones, pero reuniones donde estamos más conectados, reuniones donde estamos más disponibles, espacios donde la conexión y la conversación puede ser más corta, pero mucho más efectiva, ¿no? En lugar de tener, como decía Bob, cientos y cientos y cientos de horas de reuniones donde nadie está conectado, donde nadie está poniendo atención, donde nadie está disponible, donde la gente no está presente. Pero ¿qué pasa si empezamos a tener reuniones donde nos conectamos? Y obviamente reuniones que tengan una estructura conversacional que nos permita conectarnos, que nos permita conversar de lo que necesitamos conversar y lograr los resultados que necesitamos lograr. Entonces, es allí donde alineamos nuestro cuerpo con nuestra mente, con nuestra conversación y con el resultado que queremos tener. Y ahí está puesta toda esa estructura súper bonita que Bob nos hablaba y que es también parte de nuestras estructuras fundamentales que se llama la anatomía de la acción. Pero tiene que ver con eso. ¿Cuáles son esas conversaciones en las que realmente queremos estar? ¿Cuáles son las estructuras de esas conversaciones? Y cómo las combinamos somáticamente y emocionalmente para que produzcan los resultados que necesitamos producir. Por eso el liderazgo es un arte de alto impacto. Eso era lo que quería decir, Bob. Gracias.
Well, we've come to the end of our scheduled time, and so it's time to wrap up, but we gave you just a little taste. But what we did tonight was not just a little experience in a webinar. We gave you a connection to awareness. And remember, awareness creates choice. Take this back to your life. Pay attention to how you listen. Pay attention to the bodies in the conversation. Pay attention to your presence. Notice when there's connection or not connection. Play with how to provoke authentic connection. Give people a voice. When Maribel said people were tired of being at the screen, don't be at the screen. Be with the people. Learn to connect. Have real conversations that matter. Otherwise, let's not waste our time. The organizational world needs healthy leaders, needs healthy professionals, healthy conversations. And that's what we're about in our programs that we invite you to. So hopefully, if this has been relevant for you, continue your conversation with us, because this is our passion. This is what we do, is we want to help leaders and organizations start from the foundation of human beings, not machines, and create better lives, more value in the world. And we can. We're demonstrating it. And if that's what calls you in your life, then we are a place to do your learning and development and join a community who shares those values. So with that, I'll turn it over to Maribel to wrap us up. Thank you. My pleasure to, and I enjoyed being in this conversation with you this evening. Thank you.
Bob, gracias como siempre por traernos tu sabiduría. Sé que muchos de ustedes ya son alumnos nuestros, muchos de ustedes ya están inscritos para el programa este año, pero aquellos que estén interesados en saber qué es esto del liderazgo generativo, qué es lo que aprendemos en el programa, cómo lo aprendemos, cómo se aprende esto de tener un liderazgo somático y de cómo como coach acompañar a organizaciones, a mis equipos y a los equipos de otras personas. Vamos a tener un evento este viernes al que le hemos llamado el CCG por un día. El programa se llama Coaching y Consultoría Generativa, que también acepta muchos líderes. También tenemos líderes, tenemos coaches, tenemos consultores en el programa. Y vamos a hacer un demo o un in-house o un bootcamp o un, no sé, lo llaman de tantas maneras, gratuito este viernes. Así que para quienes quieran estar inscritos, para quienes quieran estar allí viviendo durante un día, ¿qué es esto del liderazgo generativo? ¿Qué otros temas hay y con qué profundidad lo vivimos? Ahí en el chat, Martica les está dejando el link en el cual se pueden registrar. Nosotros de vuelta les mandamos toda la información, pero vengan, acompáñennos, no se queden con 1 hora y media, miren qué más hay detrás de este espacio, de tener una estructura profesional como líder, una estructura profesional como coach, y cómo es eso de que como líder o como coach puedo acompañar a otras personas a tener un mundo mejor, a ser más productivas, pero adicionalmente a tener una buena vida para todos y en todos los espacios de nuestra vida. Así que muchas gracias por estar aquí, gracias por estar con nosotros y nos vemos el viernes. Espero tenerlos, espero que estemos todos allí y espero podamos verlos. Pop, nuevamente muchas gracias. Beita, gracias por tu traducción. Martica, gracias por el portugués. El viernes vamos a tener traducción simultánea en español, en inglés y en portugués. Así que eso también tiene una intención. Parte de nuestra promesa de ser Latinoamérica es ser Latinoamérica, y la intención que tenemos con Martica, que es quien nos apoya y quien es la que sostiene toda la promesa en Brasil, es: los brasileños necesitamos ser parte de Latinoamérica, no importa que tengamos otro idioma. Latinoamérica no es Latinoamérica sin Brasil. Así que eso es lo que estamos intentando hacer y eso es lo que queremos hacer. El viernes nos vemos de 9 a 2, Perú, Colombia. Y bueno, los esperamos allí. No importa que hayan estado en el programa, vengan. Sé que está Pedro, está Teresina, están otras personas que han estado con nosotros. Vengan, vuelvan a revisar sus fundamentos. Y bueno, y nos no más. Los espero el próximo, los espero el viernes y nos vemos dentro de 8 días. Un abrazo a todos. Gracias.
Bye bye.